Alright guys, we're going to look at another graph of a quadratic equation. Today I'm going to find the vertex, axis of symmetry, x-intercept, y-intercept, domain, range, the increasing interval, the decreasing interval, the positive interval, and the negative interval. Okay, so we're going to find all of these things, plus we're going to graph it. So first off, I'm looking for my vertex. My vertex is always a value called h comma k, and h value always comes from whatever x is attached to, x minus 3 in this case, but it's always the opposite sign. So here I see x minus 3. My h value is actually going to be a positive 3. K comes from the value on the outside, which in this case is 8. So this means that my vertex is going to be the point 3, 8. I can use this to help me set up the rest of my graph. By putting 3 in the x value and finding other x values on either side of it. So we're going to try to find small ones. So if I plug in each of these numbers, I'll end up with my y values. Again, I'm going to plug them in here, simplify, and find the y values. I'm not going to talk through this. I'm just going to simply plug them in. When I plug in 1, I have 1 minus 3 squared times negative 2 plus 8. So 1 minus 3 squared is going to be 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. This is going to be 0. If I plug in 2, 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Times negative 2 is negative 2. Plus 8 is going to be 6. And if I know anything about quadratics, I know the sides should mirror each other. So this should be 6 and this should also be 0. So I'm going to go ahead and plug everything in. Or I'm going to plot everything, plot all these points. My first point is at 1, 0, 2, 6, 3, 8, 4, 6, and 5, 0. So I already know my vertex is at this point, 3, 8. I do want to point out something that maybe you don't realize, or maybe you weren't sure of why it happened, but our graph is flipped upside down. The reason for it being flipped upside down is because of this negative value in the front. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the 2, but it has everything to do with the negative sign. This means our equation is negative, so our parabola needs to face downward. Next thing is the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry value comes from the vertical line that cuts our graph in half, and it comes from the x value of the vertex. The x value of our vertex is at 3, so this means our axis of symmetry is x equals 3. My x-intercepts are where the graph of this equation crosses the x-axis. So at this point here and this point here, those are the points 1, 0, and 5, 0. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and we don't see it here, but it is happening just lower down in the graph. To find it, we would take our equation, plug in 0 for x, and solve. This is going to become y equals negative 2 times negative 3 squared plus 8. So y equals negative 2 times 9 plus 8. Y equals negative 18 plus 8. y equals -10. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, -10. Again, 0 because we plugged in 0 for x. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down there. And we know it would be much further down in our graph, so we're not going to worry about that. Domain comes from the arrows. So this arrow has an x value of -infinity because it's going to the left, and a y value of -infinity because it's going down. This arrow has an x value of +infinity because it's going to the right, and a y value again of -infinity because it's going down. My domain will always come from the x values of each of those arrows, which in this case is -infinity, +infinity. The range comes from the y values of the vertex, which in this case is 8, and the y value of the arrows. So from the smallest, which is -infinity, to the largest, which is +8, this is the range. My increasing interval is, as I read my graph from left to right, so left to right, I'm going along the graph and figuring out where it's increasing or going up, which would be from this arrow to the vertex, and we take the x value of both of those pieces. So the x value of my left arrow is -infinity. The x value of my vertex is 3. So this is the increasing interval. Increasing also means it's going in the positive direction. So this is also going to be my positive interval. These will always match. Decreasing interval, again, we're reading our graph from the left to the right, going along our graph, meaning I started that middle piece and I'm going to the right. I have to go downward because that's the direction my graph is going, meaning I'm decreasing from the vertex to my right arrow. And I look at the x value again, that's from 3 to +infinity. We're also going in the negative direction, so 3 to +infinity. All right, guys, we have graphed, labeled, and found all of the values for our quadratic equation. Have a great day.